What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having an amazing day. That's right, I'm speechless. Not in the sense that I can't find things to talk about necessarily when it comes to Bitcoin and crypto, etc. I'm just speechless in the sense that it has finally happened, and I'm not really sure what else could be said. We've been making videos on this channel for 7 years, guys. I've been in the space for 8 years. The amount of people that have called people like you and I crazy when it comes to Bitcoin, right? It's a scam. It's a Ponzi. It's not legitimate. Well, guess what, guys? It officially is legitimate. We had 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs get approved simultaneously. We had $2.5 billion worth of trading on just BlackRock's ETF alone in the first 30 minutes. We had Bitcoin hitting the highest levels that we've seen in over a year and a half. That's right. If we actually come over to the chart right here, you can see that we actually tapped $49,000 just this morning. We are witnessing history in the making, and every single one of you watching right now, you have to give yourself a pat on the back because we were able to do something that no one has ever done before, which is front run the institutions, front run the big wigs on Wall Street, right? The first chance that the little guy had an opportunity to get into something that is literally going to go down in the history books, and I am not overstating this. I believe by the end of this video, you'll understand why, and I am going to keep it short because I think at this point, we have talked enough about Bitcoin. I am blue in the face talking about Bitcoin, and congratulations to everyone that took the time and the opportunity to come out all these years and watch these videos, because now, who's laughing, right? Who is laughing at, I mean, literally nobody can literally anymore say that Bitcoin isn't a legitimate asset. It is, in fact, a legitimate asset. And the implications of this are going to be, like I said, one for the history books. So having a look right here, what I really wanted to talk about specifically is what Samson Mao was discussing. And, he talks about Bitcoin, ETF ad campaigns, nation state adoption, the halving, Veblen effect, 118x multiplier, supply shock, recursive demand shock, low Bitcoin supply on exchanges, max pain theory, renewed quantitative easing, FASB, omega candles await. Now, this is something that is much different than the futures ETFs that we've had in the past. And this is going to open the doors to an unprecedented amount of capital. The times are changing the same way that we had technology, we had automobiles changing the horse and buggy, right? We had the telephone, specifically now we have the smartphone, right? Imagine the idea that everyone sitting around the table has a smartphone, has a computer literally in their pocket. We are entering the digital age. And as the generations continue, Bitcoin is going to be, I don't know, is this a pun intended? Gold standard. I mean, you want to hear something crazy? Think about this. Every child born today into the world right now is going to grow up in a world where Bitcoin exists. In fact, any person that's 15 years or younger has grown up in a world where Bitcoin has existed. And the standard is, in fact, moving. I want to talk about a lot today. I want to discuss the implications of what this could mean, not just for the Bitcoin price, but also for the perception of the asset class as a whole. I want to discuss these inflows and why I'm going to tell you guys it could get a lot crazier and a lot faster than most are anticipating. So I wanted to start right here with this video from the Bitwise CEO, where he's going into what does this mean for portfolio managers, and you're probably going to be shocked with what he has to say.
I think this is probably the most important moment in Bitcoin's history, or at least in the last 10 years. It's a huge unlock for access to the space. We think it's an incredibly important moment.
So according to a survey that your company recently did, about 88% of portfolio managers, they've been waiting for an opportunity to add Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and they say an ETF is that opportunity. So once this, now that it's approved and once it starts trading, what kind of adoption are you expecting on the portfolio manager side? Do you believe it's going to be like a certain allocation of a portfolio? What are you hearing?
Yeah, we're hearing huge demand. So at Bitwise, we're launching BITB, the lowest cost Bitcoin ETF in America. And as you said, what we've heard from clients, 88% of advisors said they wanted to wait for an ETF to be approved to allocate to that space. That moment's arrived. We've heard demand, a huge amount of demand from our client base. We serve tens of thousands of investors across the country. And how they will incorporate it will be different across different investors. Generally, what we see is a 1 to 5% allocation in portfolios where the volatility but low correlations of Bitcoin can be really additive to the overall picture. And I think that's key. I think sometimes people think that investing in Bitcoin and the volatility that comes with that is a risky bet. But what most investors are doing is sizing it in a way that it's beneficial to the overall portfolio. They're not putting all of their money in Bitcoin. And the ETFs, BITB, make that straightforward and impossible today.
And this is just the beginning. I can already see in the comments, oh, it's dumping. Oh, it's not moving enough. Guys, it hasn't even been 24 hours yet. It is day one. I know that our brains are rattled from the crypto prices and the fast pace and the 15-second, TikTok videos. It's day one. It is day one, guys. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've seen Bitcoin go from $2,000 to $70,000. What do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years with all of the doors wide open? And you might not remember what happened, but when the ETF for gold launched, it was pretty impressive.
I think it's a huge catalyst. If you look at the history of gold, after the dollar came off of the gold peg in the 70s, gold was still around and it traded around. But it was really in 2003 when gold got its first ETF that the market expanded and gold went on a 10-year bull market. And so I think with the Bitcoin ETFs, finally there's a way for busy investors, for professional investors to access this opportunity. And that will mean adoption through the ETF, but it will also grow the overall market with investors buying Bitcoin directly as well.
And you got to consider the untapped 30 trillion potentially under management. What could this mean for the inflows?
So up until Wednesday's approval from the SEC, the $30 trillion advised wealth management industry in the U.S. had largely been cut out of the crypto sector. And, very few U.S. investors have any sort of material allocation to Bitcoin at this point, despite it being one of the best performing asset classes of the last 18 months. You've got the VanEck CEO making the point that a lot of fiduciaries, financial advisors, and frankly, the banks have been told to steer clear of crypto up till now. That changes today. You've got Standard Chartered anticipating fund inflows of $50 to $100 billion into these spot ETFs in the U.S. by the end of this year. And that's just the primary flows. We're not even looking at the secondary flows here in terms of other publicly listed funds that are now changing their prospectus filings with the SEC so that they can allocate more of their assets under management to Bitcoin.
Now, we do know in the past we have had these futures products that have launched for Bitcoin, and they have in fact been, unfortunately, sell the news events. But there is something very, very different about the underlying features of a spot versus a futures. And it's not just the fact that, they have to physically hold it. There are other things that are in play that are making this a much different monster than we've ever seen before.
Well, the problem with the futures is it resets every month. And so when you look at the fee structure and the rollover, effectively you're paying a very high fee for exposure to Bitcoin. With the spot ETF, you have a number of advantages. One is very low fees. Compared to GBTC, for example, the 2% fee they charge today will now go down substantially if they have to compete with other funds that are charging 20 basis points, 40 basis points compared to the 200 basis points they're charging. An interesting subtlety that most people don't get is GBTC has to sell about $200 million worth of Bitcoin a year to cover their fee, which now they would not have to do. So there'll be a little bit less supply in the marketplace, which would help the price. But essentially, the ETF really provides access to institutional investors, retirement accounts, the many trillions of dollars that are locked up. Potentially a small little allocation to Bitcoin will happen. And because there's only a finite number of Bitcoin, most Bitcoin is locked up in long-term holders. There's very little liquidity in the Bitcoin market. It's really only about 2 million Bitcoin a day are traded. So we believe the ETF will only be positive.
Vijay Boyapati was over on Kitco News talking to Michelle McCory over here, and he's not one to usually give price predictions, but he actually finally came out for the first time and explained where he thinks Bitcoin is going and why he thinks it's going to overtake gold.
It's funny. I usually feel pretty uncomfortable giving price forecasts, but the way I think about it is not in terms of a price forecast. I believe Bitcoin will attain the same market capitalization as gold and surpass gold in the next 5 years. And if you want to translate that into a price, the market capitalization of gold right now is about $13 trillion. And given Bitcoin's current supply, that would equate to a Bitcoin price over the next 5 years or so of about $500,000, like $500,000. I do believe that Bitcoin will eventually surpass gold because as a store of value, it has attributes that make it much superior to gold. I like to actually, and I should say this as someone who is a gold bug myself, I call myself a reformed gold bug. Bitcoin is like gold, except with teleportation built in and just more scarce. So it's just strictly superior to gold. And, I love my gold coins. I love to hold them in my hand. They feel very nice. But as a store of value, Bitcoin is absolutely superior. So I expect that Bitcoin is going to surpass gold. And you could say that's a target of $500,000.
So just to put that into perspective, gold is a $13.7 trillion market cap. With a tiny bit of money printing, we could get to $25 trillion in 2028. So going with this number, okay, assuming that Bitcoin continues on the same trajectory, and he considers Bitcoin gold 2.0 or better, in my opinion, transportable, more secure, etc. Gold has been around for 5,000 years, but so has the horse. I drove a car to work today, not my horse. Bitcoin will catch up inside of 5 years. That is a $1.3 million Bitcoin. And the good thing about the pitch is it doesn't involve a narrative where fiat and banks disappear, the US turns into Argentina, or we are all dead in a sea of debt. The other thing, like ARK Voorhees pointed out, is that Bitcoin is the first ETF in history in which the underlying asset has a limited supply. And we're not talking about a stock. We're not talking about a company. We are talking about information. We are talking about the internet, the digitization of the new monetary standard, which Bitcoin has clearly paved the way. Now, of course, you're seeing lots of altcoins rally today. Ethereum actually doing quite well. I do think this is because now that the Bitcoin ETF has been approved, a lot of people are anticipating that an Ethereum ETF might be approved within the next 6 to 8 months. So hey, not financial advice. There were a lot of people doom and glooming Ethereum. I don't talk much about Ethereum on this channel. I don't have anything against it, but I do think that Ethereum could potentially also be a very good play, as we've seen the Bitcoin run up to the spot Bitcoin ETF. Maybe we'll have the same for Ethereum, right? But I think we need to keep Bitcoin in the spotlight because, again, something that I want to point out, going back to my statement of any 15-year-old alive today has been alive in a world where Bitcoin is. And I'll tell you what, this is one quick story. I'm traveling. I had to go, I was at a friend's wedding and I was talking to some older people. This woman, she was in her 70s. And I was, she asked me what I do for a living. It's always hard to explain that to people. And, again, talking about Bitcoin, again, she says, oh, I don't know. I still don't trust it. I don't know about that. Now, keep in mind, if this woman is 70 years old, that means when she was 55, Bitcoin had just come out. So she's had a lot of time to do research and learn about this, right? Well, we just had a spot Bitcoin ETF approval. So I don't know how it's not legitimate, but yet there are still people that are not understanding it. And let me tell you something right now. You think this is it, this is the peak. Guys, we haven't even seen the retail FOMO yet. I still have only, I would say maybe since all of this action, I may have had maybe five phone calls. Whereas in the previous, my phone was ringing off the hook. I had to actually start putting it on silent, okay? You're not having the cab drivers talking about Bitcoin. You're not having the everyday person talking about Bitcoin just yet. That hasn't even set in yet. They don't even understand how big this just is. And the reality is all of these dinosaurs, no disrespect to obviously the elderly. I respect everyone, in any situation, but a lot of these boomers, they just don't get it. And unfortunately, as time passes, and this isn't being rude or anything, they're going to pass away probably, or, they're going to get on the boat or they're not. But when you have, I'm a millennial, I know a lot of Gen Zs that are looking into things like stocks making 25%, whatever, gold literally just getting back to the all-time high after 10 years. But did that really outpace inflation? And, like Anthony Pompliano broke it down just this morning, this is a paradigm shift. This is a complete change in the way that we are going to move forward as a society.
Yeah, there's another interesting thing that's happening, right? So if I go on Wall Street and I ask people, what is your benchmark? They'll tell me the S&P, maybe NASDAQ, right? They have these equity-based benchmarks. If I go ask a 25-year-old or younger, Bitcoin is the benchmark. And so the reason why that's interesting is there's an entire generation of people who say, if I can't beat Bitcoin, then I might as well just buy it. And that's why you see those people, the only thing they're allocating to is Bitcoin or the long tail of crypto assets they're basically speculating on. And so as those people age, now Bitcoin becomes that benchmark. It's going to get into everyone's portfolio. So volatility will dampen down. But ultimately, if you want mass adoption, everyone's got to put it in their portfolio, right? And so the days of the asymmetric 1,000% increases in a single year are probably gone. But an asset that's compounding at 20, 30, 40, 50% a year, you can't get that in the stock market. So I still think it'll be very attractive to a lot of people.
Does it still compound like that, though? I mean, if it becomes less volatile, if you have everybody able to get into it to do these things, does it still have growth like that?
There's a really interesting mechanism here where we've never had an ETF of a finite asset, right? Every asset is got some degree of increasing or expanding supply. This is a finite asset. And so now all of a sudden you have what could be tens of billions, hundreds of billions, depending on who you ask, that's going to come into this over the next, let's say, 10 years. But there's still only 21 million Bitcoin.
Gold.
I mean, look at what BlackRock is literally sending out to their customers. You know, they're going to be pushing this. They're going to want people to get on the Bitcoin bandwagon. Bitcoin is the best performing asset in the last decade. I mean, only with the year of 2014, 2018, and 2022. Other than that, Bitcoin clearly was the place to be. And over the long haul, there's absolutely no denying that, right? Not to mention the fact that we are going to see these ETF fee wars. I mean, you have some of them literally that are offering 0% for the first 6 or 12 months, right? And as we saw previously, this is much better than a futures, which has to, sell some Bitcoin, unfortunately, and has to have these higher fees, right? Very, very attractive to some of these newcomers. We also, for example, this is kind of a side note, but you have stablecoin issuer Circle filing for an IPO. I mean, you are seeing it shift into the crypto world. And, just getting back to this, Cathie Wood still is holding her base case of 600,000 to her bull case of 1.5 million by the year 2030.
And our base case is in the $600,000 range. Our bull case, and we think the probability of the bull case has increased with this SEC approval. This is a green light. Our bull case is $1.5 million by 2030. You can see the building blocks. You can see how conservative we are in terms of those building blocks. This is a big idea. It is the first global, decentralized, digital, rules-based, critical there, rules-based monetary system in history. It is a very big idea.
So knowing what you know, and knowing that these are the possibilities of the bearish scenario in the next 6 years being a $600,000 Bitcoin, it really is no competition or question as to where we really should be allocating our capital. And I'm not a financial advisor, but there's a lot of financial advisors that are going to be financially advising Bitcoin. So times are definitely changing, my friend. I know you guys want to look at the charts. The charts are interesting right now because, we had talked about this area up at around this 0.618. And what's quite interesting is we have hit that 40, we have hit that sort of $48,000 to $49,000 area. And even with all the excitement, we are still seeing the technicals play out, which is kind of interesting. In fact, you can see we've wicked down to this area right here that we've been talking about, which is the volume range. Now, obviously, this volume range falls off a cliff, which actually would put the next target, this is going to sound crazy, at around $56,000 to $57,000. We also know that our target from this falling wedge obviously puts us up to around that area, right? I've showed you, if you just take this breakout, I mean, this is just simple technical analysis, guys. We've had this target for how long? It brings us to the 0.618, $48,776. And I kid you not, that's literally where we're, hanging out right now. So from a technical perspective, if I didn't know the ETF happened, this is exactly what we had expected. Are we going into this parabolic phase? I don't know. We've never really seen something happen like this before the halving, but again, this is something very, very different, right? We are holding very, very nicely above all these moving averages. We do have the money flow staying pretty consistently on the daily, even more aggressively over here on the weekly. In fact, we do have a green dot, which just printed up here, which you guys know that probably says that we're looking to potentially continue this trend. And, of course, there will be pullbacks, but as history has pointed out, even if we didn't have the ETF, the Bitcoin 4-year cycle, or whatever you want to refer to it as, has showed us that once we get out of the red into the green of the channel, we do tend to put in a bit of an ascending broadening wedge after breaking the bump and run. We broke the bump and run right here. We had the retest in March of the beginning of this year, which is when I said, that's it. That's when I called and said, that's it, the bottom's in. And I was right on that call, and anyone that bought pretty much, anyone that bought really around that 18,800 area, you should be up at this point. And, if history repeats, at some point you are going to break this and you are going to end up into that parabolic phase, which you could argue we may even be starting right now. But, again, I don't really want to talk too much about the TA right now. We'll get into that. We're going to have a lot of fun trading. It's going to be really fun, guys. But right now, I think it's more important to just celebrate that victory. Again, congratulations. There's a lot of people that watch these videos. The like ratio to watch ratio is very low. I don't know why. I put out this free content every single day. It would be nice to get a like, if you guys stuck around to the end, thank you so much. As you'll notice, this is a little bit of a calmer video of mine. But again, like I said, I'm somewhat speechless. This was anticipated. It was inevitable. It was going to happen. And, I don't want to really make any predictions myself because predictions, who knows, I'm not Nostradamus, but I do think we're going to see a new all-time high before the end of this year. I think it could happen a lot sooner than people think. I do believe that we are going to have some form of a correction at some point. I don't know if we're going to get those big corrections like we used to now with the institutions, though. Are we going to get those 30-40% drawdowns? I don't know anymore. Those days might be gone. Who knows, though? Statistically, yeah, we're due for about a 30-40% drawdown. But if we get up to 70%, we have a 40% drawdown by 70%. What does it matter? It's still an amazing opportunity to accumulate at these levels. So, yes, I do see Bitcoin going to $1 million in our lifetime. Could it happen as soon as 2030, like Kathy Wood is suggesting? It's a possibility, guys. But that's really it for me today. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. I'm sure there's a lot of other exciting content that you guys could be watching, but I just wanted to once again give a massive shout out to everyone who has been supporting the channel. It's been an honor and a pleasure. The journey is not over, by the way. I'm not closing up shop. It's not like, oh, the ETF got approved. That's it. Oh, no. There's going to be a lot to talk about. There's also going to be a lot of FUD that's going to come out. There's still going to be those FUD articles. There's going to be those bullish narratives. But the thing is when you get into these bull trends, the same way where the bullish news in the bear market just doesn't affect it, you're going to find that the bearish news in the bull market is not going to affect it as much either. And I do believe we're in a bull market. If you don't believe we're in a bull market at this point, I don't know. I don't know how to convince you guys. But at the end of the day, thank you so much again. Congratulations. You did this on your own. You really did. I mean, yeah, I made videos, but you're the one that chose to take those steps. You're the one that did the research and bought the Bitcoin or crypto. Maybe you have some Ethereum. I don't know what you're owning. Everything's up today. But at the end of the day, this is definitely a historical moment. This is something that our children's children are going to be reading about. And this is the beginning of what I believe to be a new paradigm. Hyper-Bitcoinization, as they put it, or whatever you might say. So I love you guys again. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. I don't know if I'm going to be able to be getting videos out, really. I may not even be able to make a video until Monday, but if you're new and you're watching for the first time, get subscribed because we dive deep into all sorts of crypto-related content. And biggest question a lot of people have been asking me is, will I be discussing altcoins? Well, yes, I'm going to start discussing altcoins. Why am I going to start discussing them now? Oh, you missed the bottom. Guys, I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the tide that raises all the boats. The tide is rising. The boats are going to rise with it. And now, in the next year and a half, we are going to see those life-changing opportunities. Some of you, millionaires could be minted. I'm not kidding. I've seen it. I've seen people turn 10,000 into 100 into $1 million. I've seen it. You 10x 10,000, you got 100. You 10x 100, you got $1 million. I might be oversimplifying it, but I'm really not when you think about it. And, maybe one day I'll share my whole story with you guys because crazy as it is, crazy story. But I love you guys. You're awesome. Take care. Be safe out there. It may start to get a little bit volatile. Of course, if you do want to learn how to trade, check out Apex Dex or check out LevX. They're still offering that promotion, up to $5,000 matched. And they have all these cool bonuses, actually. I got a bonus today. I clicked on it, and they gave me like $5. Literally. I don't know. It's pretty cool. So check it out. Use the link below if you're interested. I love you guys. You're awesome. Until next time, stay crypto. We did it. And, of course, peace out.